had been charged with conspiracy, aggravated assault, dishonest related crimes, and he had an arrest record in the prosecution's possession. He had a statement and an arrest record. It was not disclosed under 5501. The criminal defendant shows up at trial and testifies. He's a great guy, honest, no criminal record. The prosecution whips out his arrest record and his statement, disclosable under 5501, which it never disclosed, and said not true. Court breaks. Defendant says, you didn't disclose that under 5501. And the prosecution says, who cares? He's up on the stand lying. This would not have been favorable to him at all. And so, Judge, I want a continuance. Give them a continuance. That's their remedy. Come back tomorrow. I'll disclose everything. I'll make it all right. And then we'll continue. Trial court says, fine, I'll give you that continuance. Limited remedy. You'll have all the information. Do with it what you will. If it's negative, fine. If it's not, that's for you to use at trial. He's convicted. It gets appealed. It ends up in the Supreme Court of New Mexico. That decision was reversed. The continuance is not adequate in those circumstances. They're in the middle of trial. The defendant would have done things differently. The defendant would have opened differently, would have asked questions differently. Too much about where the source, in this case, of the live bullet came in before this was presented at trial. The court said, it doesn't matter if the defendant knew or should have known of it. What we're talking about here is not the defendant's knowledge, not whether it matches, not matches, not whether his criminal arrest record would have hurt him or not. We're talking about the conduct of the prosecution. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, Your Honor. We're talking about a prosecution that didn't preserve those bullets, that didn't collect them at all, that didn't turn them over, that we already have a 5501 culpability finding with respect to the last set of information. And Your Honor, the bottom line is we've got 5501 violation, culpability. We don't need to show bad faith. We've got a Brady violation. We've got a Giglio violation. Now, this is critical evidence in the case that was never disclosed to us. We heard Ms. Morrissey say, I'm going to have Detective Hancock come in and testify. We could have Ms. Popple testify. They could say it doesn't match, et cetera, et cetera. It does not matter. It did not matter in Allison. We were entitled to it. A continuance is not a sufficient remedy. This case should be dismissed, Your Honor. This is over and over and over and over again. And Your Honor, you've given them a fair chance. You said, grand jury, as Mr. Spiro said, you said, I'm going to give you a remedy on Trumbetta. I'm going to limit it. I'm going to give you your remedy. You've given them more than enough opportunities, Your Honor. This is not the first time. It's not the second time. It's not even the third time. It's time for this case to be dismissed, Your Honor. That's what Brady requires. That's what Giglio requires. That's what 5501 requires. As Your Honor knows, we've got remedies in the alternative, but this is the one that's right for this moment. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Ms. Morrissey?
I need to use the monitor. I want to walk you through everything that has occurred in this regard, everything that these defense attorneys knew well before today, and everything that was also disclosed to Ms. Gutierrez's counsel. So what you can see from the transcript of Mr. Teskey's interview during the Gutierrez case prior to her trial is that Mr. Teskey is Thel Reed's close friend. And Mr. Teskey stores Mr. Reed's ammunition. And the reason that he stores it for Mr. Reed is because Mr. Reed lives in a single wide mobile home that doesn't have a lot of security. And because he's a professional armorer, he has a bunch of guns and ammunition. Mr. Teskey is a retired police officer who has a whole bunch of security at his property. So Thel Reed has 300 rounds of live .45 caliber ammunition. And he and Seth Kinney are hired by the producers for the show 1883. Everything that I want you to know, Your Honor, everything that I'm telling the court, Mr. Bowles has this information and these people have this information. So nothing I'm telling the court is new. So they get hired on this to do what's called a cowboy training on the set of 1883. So the cowboy training is where gun experts, that being Thel Reed and Seth Kinney, take the actors to shoot real guns with real ammunition so that they have a better idea of the recoil and how the gun is actually supposed to look, and to help them with their acting techniques. In fact, the fact that production companies do this was actually something that Mr. Baldwin pointed out to Detective Hancock during his interview. He himself has done this with a production company. So when they're through with the cowboy training camp in Texas, they've got some rounds left over. And Seth Kinney says, I'm going to take these. And Thel Reed lets him take them. So, and let me back up. When they originally went to the cowboy training camp in Texas, they didn't take all of Thel's ammunition. They took a certain amount of it, and Thel left some in Troy Teskey's garage. All of this ammunition came from the same place. This was all from basically the same batch of ammunition that Thel Reed had, that he got from a manufacturer, from an ammunition manufacturer in Kingman, Arizona, named Joe Swanson. So they take 300 of his rounds, they go do the cowboy training camp. Seth Kinney then takes the leftover rounds back to PDQ. So then what happens is Mr. Bowles begins to tell Detective Hancock, hey, you need to go execute a search warrant at PDQ because there's this green ammo can that Seth Kinney took after the 1883 training camp. Hancock, to her credit, takes Mr. Bowles at his word. She gets a search warrant. She goes to PDQ. What Mr. Bowles said would be there was there, and you've seen pictures of it. There's a green ammo can, says 1883 live ammunition. They take it, they send it to the FBI for testing. Not only does it not look like the live rounds from Rust, but it has a different chemical composition. So at that point in time, Hancock has kind of realized, I think, that she's being led down this path by Mr. Bowles that's coming from Thel Reed. Thel Reed is trying to slough everything off on Seth Kinney. So I want to show you when Seth Kinney is with Detective Hancock, what Mr. Nickus was referring to. He reaches out to Teskey because he's there with Hancock, and he says, hey, send me a photo of the live rounds that you have left over, because I'm giving her the live rounds from my green can. I think he just gave her some of them. They hadn't executed the search warrant at that point in time. Teskey says, okay. And he sends to Seth Kinney, you can see November 1st, he sends him that photograph of the live rounds that are in his possession. When you look at that photograph, and I'll blow it up for you, you can tell these are not similar to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. Detective Hancock gets this information from Mr. Kinney. Ultimately, though, still goes ahead and executes her search warrant, as she should. I come into this case, I look at the ammunition that was taken from PDQ. I understand from the witnesses that the ammunition was sourced originally from Thel Reed. It was sourced from Hannah's dad. It's not a match. Not only is it not a match when you look at it, it's not a match when you send it to the FBI and you ask them to conduct chemical testing. So this is a wild goose chase. This has no evidentiary value whatsoever. This is simply a man trying to protect his daughter And he's doing it by providing information that doesn't even match. He's trying to provide evidence that doesn't even match the evidence that was found at the scene. So then let's cut to November of 2023. We do a pretrial interview of Mr. Teskey. Let me back up. Detective Hancock reached out when she got this photograph. She reached out to Mr. Teskey, and she'll testify to this. If you want her to testify under oath, I'm happy to have her do it. She reached out to Mr. Teskey and she said, hey, because you appear to be cooperative, can you just package that stuff up and mail it to me? Because he's in Arizona. He's not here in New Mexico. And he never does. He never sends it to her. She doesn't pursue it because on its face, it's not the same ammunition. Let's cut to November 2023. We're doing the pretrial interview of Troy Teskey, where he talks about the ammunition and he talks about what he knows, what information he has about the relevance of this ammunition. What's also very important, and I can have under oath testimony to this fact also, this pretrial interview that was done over Zoom was, well, Mr. Bowles was there. So this was never kept from Gutierrez's lawyers. It was her lawyers that were bringing it to us. So there was no issue there. The jury was completely misled yesterday. So this pretrial interview that takes place in November of 2023 is uploaded to our discovery server. And when it's uploaded to the server, Mr. Baldwin hasn't been indicted yet. When he is ultimately indicted, everything that is on that server is taken and it's put on a hard drive, and it's sent, I believe, to Ms. Clark, who isn't here right now. And certainly Mr. James is happy to testify that it was uploaded to the server, that he downloaded it onto that hard drive, and he provided it to Mr. Baldwin's counsel. So the jury was misled again yesterday when Mr. Spiro indicated we had no idea about any of this. They've had it the entire time.
I don't want to hear about how the jury was misled. I just want to.
So when I have the pretrial interview with Troy Teskey, if the court wants to know the reason that we didn't actually get the ammunition from him is because I said, since he's out of state and we'd have to get another law enforcement agency basically to go pick it up and take it and send it to us, I said, have him send me a picture of it so that I can determine whether it has any evidentiary value and I can speak to my case agent about it. The photograph that was sent to me is the photograph in the middle. That is not the same ammunition. You can tell from looking at it. It has a different projectile shape. That's not the same projectile shape. That's not the same casing. This isn't a Starline brass casing. And it also has brass primers and not silver primers. So I decided, I agreed with Detective Hancock, this has no evidentiary value. We're not going to continue to go down this rabbit hole. I want the court to know that the photographs that I spoke to Detective Hancock about yesterday, where it does appear that Ms. Gutierrez has the live ammunition in her own hand that was taken a little more than a month after Ms. Hutchins died, those are on the right. So you can see the bottom photo, you can see the Starline brass casing, you can see the nickel primer, and then when you look up here, you can see the shape of the projectile. It's a spot-on match for the live rounds. There is absolutely nothing about the ammunition that Troy Teskey had that has any evidentiary value in the Gutierrez case. It has no evidentiary value in the Baldwin case. This feels like asking us to go to every sporting goods store, collect all of their .45 caliber ammunition, and send it off for testing. We're not required to do that. It simply doesn't have any evidentiary value, and the defense was aware of it. If the court, let me check my notes real quick. And another thing that's really important about the transcript of Mr. Teskey's pretrial interview is he does not say, this is the same ammunition that killed Helena Hutchins. He says, that's what Seth Kenney told me. Well, we've interviewed Seth Kenney countless times, and he's testified before Your Honor, and that is not what he says. He does not support that. So Mr. Teskey indicated during his pretrial interview that he had no personal knowledge of whether or not this ammunition had anything to do with what was happening on the set of Rust. That all came from Seth. We investigated Seth. We talked to Seth. The only way that this has, on the best of days, for this to be relevant information for even Ms. Gutierrez, it's not at all relevant to Mr. Baldwin, but even for Ms. Gutierrez, it has to actually have some exculpatory value. And you can tell from the pictures on the right, it doesn't. It doesn't have any exculpatory value. And I want the court to keep in mind, Hannah Gutierrez, when she was working on the set of The Old Way in August, before she came to New Mexico to work on the set of Rust, she sent Seth Kenney a text message. And in that text message, she said, is it okay with you if I shoot live rounds out of the set guns? And Seth Kenney responded and said, no, don't do that. In fact, what he says is, it always ends in tears. It did this time. Hannah Gutierrez admits to law enforcement that she loaded the gun. She points out the box of dummy rounds that she was sourcing ammunition from. During her November interview, she holds up a picture of the exact same box and says, I got this from my dad. My dad wanted me to show you the boxes of dummy rounds that we use. And it was a spot-on match. She actually indicated that she got the box of dummy rounds from her own father. None of this is exculpatory at all. This is the exact same batch of ammunition that has already been sent to the FBI and tested, because it all came from the same place. There's no reason for us to do it again. Thank you.
Your Honor, I don't know at this moment if the court is intending to take evidence or not, so.
She didn't call anybody.
Okay.
I can, I mean, if the court.
It is your presentation. I'm not going to tell you what to do on your presentation.
I'll do it then. We'll take evidence. If my offer of proof isn't enough, I'm happy to go witnesses up.
I just wanted to say one thing to the court, which is just simply that Ms. Morrissey, in her presentation, didn't say one word. Not one word.
Isn't this properly for Mr.?
Well, I don't even say that. Well, he was making a legal argument. If we're going to do an evidentiary hearing, there won't be multiple lawyers involved. But so I would just simply point out that there wasn't one word about what was actually turned in. I don't know if the court realizes that. That was all about stuff that happened that.
All right. This is, thank you. All right, go ahead, Mr. Nikas.
I'll be very brief, Your Honor. If this evidence wasn't as important as we say it is, they would have turned it over. The fact that they concealed it, the fact that they put it under a separate document number, didn't disclose the supplemental report, didn't disclose the bullets, didn't bring them to the April 6th evidentiary viewing. If it was that irrelevant, it had no evidentiary value, it would have been there, Your Honor, number one. Number two, Ms. Morrissey does not get to determine what has evidentiary value and what doesn't. 5501 says it's required to be disclosed, period, full stop. And in fact, in the Allison case, it was not exculpatory. It was inculpatory. It was the defendant's own arrest record and his own lies to the state. And yet the fact that it was required to be disclosed under 5501 and the fact that it was not meant, period, full stop. We're not going to have a mini trial about this in the middle of the trial. That's exactly what the Supreme Court reversed the lower court for doing. What Ms. Moore is asking you to do. It didn't matter. It was inculpatory, but the trial would have been conducted differently. And because it would have been conducted differently, and that's exactly the truth here, this goes to credibility, it goes to the government's bias, improper motivation and incompetence. I'm taking those exact words from the motion in limine ruling that Your Honor made. That goes into evidence. It's relevant to Popple's credibility, to Hancock's credibility. It relates to every single thing we've planned in this entire case, Your Honor. And right in the middle of it, Ms. Morrissey doesn't tell you what was actually turned in. She shows you a picture from 2021, a subset of the rounds that were turned in by Teskey, a subset. He said he shot a bunch of rounds in those 2 years. The picture was only of 4. This is critical evidence, Your Honor, and whether Seth Kenney is right or wrong, or how we debate whether he was involved or not involved, that's completely irrelevant, because what we know is we don't have those bullets, and they were required to be disclosed so we could put on the case that's fair. And that's exactly what Brady says, Your Honor. Brady says that the administration of justice requires fairness. That was the entire premise of the decision, fairness. And that's all we've wanted from the beginning, Your Honor. And you've given them chance after chance after chance, and there are no more chances, Your Honor. Brady says it, Giglio says it, 5501 requires it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before I, and we can take testimony later if you all want, but I'm going to require that the state, in fact, I'm going to order that the state by 11:30 this morning produce the supplemental report, the file itself, and anything in it, and also the rounds.
May I
Yeah.
respond?
I'm
real
not
quick?
finished.
Okay.
And the rounds that Ms. Popple took from Mr. Teskey.
I want the court to understand that last night, the defense reached out to Ms. Popple and said, we want you to bring the rounds to court tomorrow. And she got their message, and then they reached out to her again and said, no, never mind. We don't want you to bring the rounds to
Thank you,
court
Ms.
tomorrow.
Morrissey. Thank you, Ms. Morrissey.
I have them.
I don't, okay, where are they?
They're here. I'll go get them.
All right. Well, actually, I want testimony from Ms. Popple on how she retrieved those.
Sure.
So I don't need the box, tell her. I need Popple.
This is really interesting. Really, really interesting. Because, you know, this is what the defense has been claiming all along, you know, that evidence hasn't been turned over. When they say things like Brady and Giglio, those are precedent-setting cases, Brady and Giglio, that state, you know, if you don't turn over exculpatory evidence to the defense, and here is Miss Papel.
I have tendered the supplemental report to the defense.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give?
Body language.
Truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Have a seat. Talking to the microphone. I would like to read the report. May I see the report?
Yes.
I saw her too, Johnny. That's her. She's sitting in a different seat today. I think the most compelling argument to me that the defense made is that they would have conducted their jury, you know, selection differently, and they would have conducted trial differently if they would have known certain things, like what they're saying wasn't disclosed. Hold on a moment. I'm not glitching on my end. I'm not seeing any glitching, Johnny. So I just think, hey, Salma Vanilla, I think that is a compelling argument. It's still kind of, I feel like the defense took a long way to get there. It was really, oh, it's glitching for you? That's weird. Let me look on my YouTube side of things.
I need the box of evidence.
Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. I am seeing that glitchiness.
Have you all inspected this?
No, we have not yet. No.
Well, how do we want to do it? I want to look at it.
I do too.
Well, do you want me to ask the questions first? I have some questions of this witness.
You can ask first, but as long as I can answer.
Can I open this, Martine? Anywhere? Like, not in the middle, but I mean up at the top? Oh. Anywhere's fine? Maybe you need gloves too. Do you have gloves? Can you get some additional? So anyway,
Yeah, that's weird, you guys. I noticed that when I look at YouTube, there's a lot of glitching. But it's gotten a little bit better. So apologies for that.
any objection, I'm going to have her step down, and when I ask her a question about which is which, she will put it out. Is that all right with everybody?
However you want to do it. Judge.
Okay, so I just need you to have some gloves. And we're gonna go right there. And you all can approach too, so you don't have to, I don't want you asking questions yet, but I do, can you move that thing? All right, please pull out the 3 Starline brass 45 volt. What the color, you need to record them? You have yours. I have yours. Pair of scissors. I got it. All right. Let's do the two DHA 45 Colt with silver and color carbon. Take your time.
So this could eventually end up being a big deal if this judge determines that this evidence was potentially exculpatory. It could lead to a mistrial, or she could, a mistrial, or at least getting the case, or maybe getting the case dismissed. I kind of doubt it would lead to getting the case dismissed, but
So we agree to BHA 45 Colt with silver and color primer.
Yes, Judge.
One CBC 45 Colt with brass and color primer.
That would be this one.
All right. Three BHA 45 Colt with brass and color primer. One Winchester 45 Colt. I don't know if we need the Winchester.
That one.
Two Winchester 45 Colt.
It's silver primer with brass primer, silver casing.
Okay, got that. Okay, one SIG 45 Colt. All right, and then 10 Starline brass 45 Colt. All right, so do we have the microphone close by? Can you pick this up? Are you picking it up? My question.
We've got one here.
All right, so point out to me, let me ask you this. Did Ziegler tested the rounds in the Hannah Gutierrez case, correct?
Yes.
He didn't test any further rounds after the Hannah Gutierrez case?
No.
Okay. In the Hannah Gutierrez case, can you point out what types he did test from here?
I'm uncertain what types he tested.
This is a witness testifying, Ms. Morrissey. Please stop.
We sent all of the,
All right, let me ask it a different way. Do you recognize any of these types of bullets to have been gathered on the Hannah Gutierrez, on the rough set?
the Starline brass with silver primer are similar to what was collected on set.
And everything that was collected on set went to Ziegler?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions, but I'll certainly allow some cross-examination. I don't know if you want to be there with her or what.
If she could take the witness chair. Let's fix it. Good morning again. I'm just going to pass the witness up, because we're not fully set up, the copy of the spent shell casing that was recovered on the scene at Ruff. And you would agree with me, right, that it's the same as the bottom of the bullets that you just provided to the court?
Yes, it's Starline brass 45 Colt with a silver primer.
So when I asked you yesterday, didn't he turn in ammunition that matched the ammunition that killed Ms. Hutchins. It's true that he did, correct?
And I did not recall at that time.
I understand that that's your position, but that's what in fact happened. Would you agree?
I would not use the word match without there being an additional analysis.
Well, who got to decide whether there would be additional analysis?
That was not myself.
It wasn't the defense, though, right? We didn't know about it.
I don't know what you were aware of.
Okay. Well, you know that we came to have an evidence viewing where we asked to see every single round that could be related to the Rust set, and this was hidden from us. You do know that.
This was not hidden.
This was not hidden?
This was under a case number. It was documented. I was instructed to document it under this case number.
Okay, so in this case that's under the Rust investigation case number, you would agree with me there's hundreds of things that you inventoried, right?
Yes.
There are hundreds of police reports that all relate to the same case number, right?
Yes.
The one thing that seems to have been put under a different case number is just this one discovery of the actual ammunition that matches the ammunition from the set of Rust.
This was put under a doc information of someone coming in claiming to have rounds that were not utilized in a case.
Okay, let's examine that for a second. When Seth Kenny comes into the precinct and he gives you ammunition, you vouchered it, right?
I was instructed to collect the ammunition from Seth Kenny.
Well, let me take a step back for a second just to make something clear. Investigator Popple, you're following orders, right, when you're doing these things, correct?
Can you please stop referring to me as investigator because it's creating a misnomer?
Okay, well, how would you, I apologize.
I'm a
not-
crime scene technician. I'm not an investigator.
Okay, I'm only doing that because it's shorter than crime scene technician.
CST works.
Perfect, okay. CST Popple. When you took the, you're effectively following orders when you're deciding whether to voucher this or voucher the Seth Kenny evidence, right?
You keep using the word voucher and I'm not sure what context you're using it.
Yeah, I apologize for that word choice. When you inventory and make a report, I think your testimony is you're doing it at the direction of supervisors. Is that fair?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay. So when Seth Kenny walks into the precinct and gives you ammunition and says it's from the Rust case, you all inventoried it, right?
Yes.
You took photos of it, right?
Yes.
You put it under the Rust case number, right?
Yes.
You turned it over to the defense, right?
According to my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Somebody else comes in to the precinct, okay? A man named Troy Teskey, right?
Yes.
Who is a former police officer, right?
I believe he stated that, yes.
Okay. And I assume you all have the diligence to be able to confirm that, right?
I do not know if it was confirmed or not.
Okay. And he comes in and he also tells you he has evidence, right?
He told us 3 years later after a trial that he had evidence that the defense wanted him to use that he no longer wanted to hold on to.
Okay, let's break that down for a second, right? Mr. Teskey isn't involved in your meetings with the prosecutors and Corporal Hancock's meetings with the prosecutors up until the trial, was it?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so doesn't it make sense that he would have seen the trial on television, been completely outraged at what he was watching, not trusted law enforcement, and then walked it into the precinct? Doesn't that make sense?
I do not know what would make sense to Mr. Teskey.
Okay, didn't he in fact tell you, I don't trust Miss Morrissey and the prosecutors?
He did not state that to me.
He didn't on your oath? You sure about that?
I do not recall him stating that.
So he turns this round in, and you, when he turns it in, obviously recognize it as Starline brass, nickel primer, Colt 45, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not as if he came in and just turned in a bunch of shells, right?
He did turn in a whole bunch of shells.
Okay. But he didn't just turn in shells, right?
He turned in multiple different 45 rounds.
I'll ask the question a third time. He didn't just turn in shells, did he?
He turned in multiple 45 rounds.
Including rounds that matched the round that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
Again, I wouldn't use the word match without further analysis.
And The reason that we don't have further analysis is you all didn't send this to the FBI for further analysis, did you?
We did not.
Right? Because if you had, it would have potentially proven the fact that all along this ammunition did come from Seth Kenny. Isn't that true?
What I was informed of by Mr. Teskey was that the ammunition originated from Joe Swanson.
And then went in the green ammo can to Seth Kenny.
I do not recall him speaking about a green ammo can.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. You know, the other thing that you're saying, I took you at first to be saying, well, it's just a bunch of ammunition, and now we've gotten to the point where it's actually the same type of ammunition. And then you've also stated in your testimony that it's like, well, there's just this guy, Troy Teskey, that just walks into the office like it's random. When really Mr. Teskey and his involvement in this case was very well known to law enforcement, correct?
I had never heard his name before.
Okay, but he came in and he said, I'm here to give evidence about the Rust case, right?
He stated that he had evidence the defense had wanted, and he no longer wanted to hang on to it.
Well,
And he was the one using the word evidence.
okay. You said to him when you met him down at the first floor of the precinct, you were called because you were the evidence, the person in charge of the evidence, the CST, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he said, thank goodness it's you. You're the perfect person to take this because you know all about the Rust case. And you said, I know all about the Rust case, right?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny that?
No.
Okay. And then he said to you, this ammunition was in Seth Kenny's possession. And you said Seth Kenny's law enforcement is well aware of Mr. Kenny, right?
I don't recall that.
So you take this ammunition on March 6th, right?
Yes.
The standard operating procedure for the Santa Fe Police Department says you're supposed to make your report within 24 hours, right?
Correct.
Okay. So tell the court, did you make your report within 24 hours?
I'm fairly certain that our SOP is that evidence should be submitted within 24 hours. I'm not certain on when the reports are supposed to be submitted.
So do you want to take your answer back? that you
Yes,
gave
I
a minute
do.
ago?
I apologize. Yes.
Well, we can enter that SOP into evidence. In this case, many times, there are police reports that are done the same day that the incident occurs. Can you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. How much longer after this revelation did you do your report?
I believe it was, I apologize. I can refer to my report to refresh my memory. Oh, I have a copy. I believe it was the following month that the report was made.
Yeah, it was approximately a month later, right?
Yes.
Okay. What happened during that month? CSD Papa.
To be fairly honest, I went out of town to visit my dying mother.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry to hear that. Were you out of town that entire month?
I don't believe it was the entire month, no.
Okay. Who was involved in the word choice in this report?
Myself?
You didn't have any input? Because this doesn't look like the same language you use in the other reports.
Well, on a normal basis, I don't have conversations with people involved in cases.
Uh-huh. But there was also other officers there that were aware of this. Corporal Hancock was aware of this, correct?
She was notified about that, yes.
Okay, and so was your supervisor who was there with you, correct?
Yes.
So you're not telling me and this court that you had no input at all in the drafting of this document, are you?
It was reviewed by my supervisor. I don't believe any corrections were made to it or requested by him.
You know, it's just, there's a funny sentence in it. It says, it's a sentence I've never seen in a police report. You tell me if you've ever seen this in a police report in your entire career. It says, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SO detectives.
You are not reading my section of the report. You're reading what was written by Lieutenant Brian Brandel.
I was going to say, it doesn't look like you're writing. So the lieutenant writes in, thank you for clarifying that. I just got this report, as you know, right? The lieutenant writes in, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SFSO detectives. Did I read that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. In your career, going back to when you were a CST in Florida, all the way through the present, have you ever seen such a sentence in a police report in your entire career?
Not that exact sentence, no.
Yeah, me neither. So you're, you could just look at this report for a second and help clarify for me which parts of this you filled out versus the lieutenant?
The section that starts at the top with my name.
Well, let's just go page by page.
That would be page 5.
After this occurred, did this cause you concern, CST Popple, that this was handled this way?
It did not.
And as I asked you yesterday, you actually said when you were meeting with Mr. Teskey, this is the ammunition that we've been looking for from the Rust set, didn't you?
I don't recall stating that.
But you're not denying that.
I'm not denying it.
So I don't know whether the most critical evidence in this case is the gun that was sent off to be destroyed or the round that killed Ms. Hutchins. It probably is the round that killed Ms. Hutchins. Would you agree with that those are probably the two most important pieces of evidence in this entire case?
I'm sorry. Can you please restate your
Sure.
long question?
Sure. Would you agree with me that the two most critical items in this case from an evidentiary perspective were probably the firearm in question and the live ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
I would say the firearm and the live ammunition from the set.
Okay. And so the firearm, which we've had hearings, discussions about, was ultimately broken beyond repair by law enforcement, right?
Was broken by the FBI lab.
Okay. And the report that was issued by the experts for the prosecution about that firearm and whether or not it had been modified before was buried also by the prosecutors, correct?
I do not know about that report.
Okay. And then we can turn to this second most critical piece of evidence in this case. And this was also buried by law enforcement, correct?
No.
No, it wasn't. Okay. Were you in the precinct when the evidence viewing occurred with the defense? I think you said yesterday that your partner or your colleague dealt with the evidence viewing.
Yes, my colleague and Detective Hancock, I believe, were there.
But you didn't, nobody asked you to take this vouchered, sealed evidence out and show it to the defense, correct?
When the request was made, I believe they couldn't quite narrow down everything that they wanted to view. There was quite a bit.
Oh, so this was a narrowing down issue? The reason that this wasn't shown to the defense is a narrowing down issue?
No, I'm stating that they couldn't quite tell me in detail what they wanted to see.
The request from the defense of all ammunition was taken by law enforcement to not mean the ammunition that you recovered that matched the ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins?
I don't believe they looked at all the ammunition that day.
Well, no, but the request was all ammunition. So I'm asking you, did law enforcement interpret that request to not include this critical evidence?
All of the items that were pulled for the case were under the Rust case number.
Which was a perfect plan.
You're asking me if there was a plan?
Well, I'm saying whether there was or there wasn't, it worked out pretty well, right?
I'm not sure what you're getting at. There was a request to view the evidence from Rust. That is the evidence that was pulled.
Well, your report says this is evidence from Rust, and then it just puts it under a different case number, and the lieutenant then writes that sentence in saying this isn't evidence from Rust, right?
My report states that Mr. Teskey believed that it was related to Rust, and then I listed the case number next to that.
Do you remember when we started my examination of you yesterday, how I sort of said to you, the way you know what evidence to find is by what people tell you? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And that when you're at a burglary and somebody says, oh, you better pick up that glove, you don't know that that person's telling the truth or not, but you pick up the glove, right?
Depending on the circumstances of the case, possibly.
And here, a retired member of law enforcement walks into the precinct who's known to law enforcement, who turns in the matching ammunition, who tells you it's involved in the case, where there's tons of corroboration, both by what he provides and the history that law enforcement knows about this man. And you put it under a different case number, right?
I'm sorry, what was your question in that long statement?
You put it under a different case number.
Yes, as I was instructed to do so.
Okay, so you need to finish up so that Ms. Morrissey can cross-examine.
Yeah, I'm trying to review this in real time. So I will pass the witness. In a moment, 1 second, Ruth. Oh, and I asked you this yesterday, but I want to ask again, which is, you told Mr. Teskey that you would write up a report because of how important this was the very same day, didn't you?
I don't recall stating the very same day.
You don't deny that, though, do you?
I don't deny it, but I don't recall it.
Okay, nothing further. For the record, that was State's Exhibit 29 that showed the witness.
All right, are we going to admit the supplemental into evidence?
Please.
Well, somebody move it in. I started the conversation. but
Defend, is it a court exhibit or just marked as defense? It's just,
I think it's, well, since I started it, are you okay with court's exhibit?
that's fine with me. And I think it's just.
However you want to handle it.
All right, court's exhibit what?
Come on.
All right, thank you. And it is, any objection?
No, certainly not.
Go ahead.
If I can just pause for a moment and just address the court. Here's what I'm intending to do. Obviously, this is a serious dispositive matter. A full record needs to be laid. I have Mr. Kenny on his way over. He'll be here any minute. We intend to take testimony from him. I also intend to take testimony from Mr. Bowles.
Here's what we're going to
Judge, I have to make a record though.
Well, just a minute.
Okay.
The issue is the disclosure,
I
okay?
understand.
All right, so,
That's why I want to call these people, is it goes to the heart of the disclosure. So all I'm asking the court for,
well, we don't have time for this. So I'm going to do, for example, like with Hancock, I'm going to have her get up on the stand and continue testifying about the case. And then this portion, just like you did with Popple yesterday, we will ask. You can call, move Seth Kenny up. You can move Seth Kenny up, but he's going to do all of his testimony if you're going to do that.
so but here's the only thing I'm trying to do, and I don't mean to be frustrating. The only thing I'm trying to do is make sure that if this court grants this motion to dismiss, that I have made a full record, and I am entitled to do that. So I am getting my witnesses over here so that I can make a full record on this issue.
Well, what's interesting to me, to be quite honest, is that yesterday, you didn't even want to do a written reply. You wanted to just give an oral response.
I never saw these. I've never seen these, and I never saw the report. I have absolutely never seen these until this morning.
All right.
I've never seen the report until
So
this
ask
morning.
questions of this witness, and then you can line up your witnesses, and I'll see. But we're going to go with Hancock after this.
Ms. Popple, I just presented to the court that I've never seen these until this morning. Do you agree with that?
Yes,
You've never shown me these, or I've never come in to see them, is that right?
correct.
Have you ever provided me that doc report?
No, I have not.
Okay. So, do you know who Troy Teskey is?
No, I do not.
I think we took some testimony from you yesterday that he is the friend of Thel Reed.
I believe that was stated, but I did not know that information.
Okay, so let me ask it this way. If Troy Teskey, who provided this ammunition, is a friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, and if these bullets,
I'd ask the prosecutor not to be touching those with her bare hands.
they rolled around for 3 years, okay. If these bullets match the ones that were on the set of Rust, is that evidence, additional evidence, that Hannah Gutierrez provided the live ammunition to the set of Rust?
Yes,
And has she been convicted for that?
yes,
Is this evidence that Seth Kinney provided live ammunition to the set of Rust?
no.
So let me ask you, Ms. Popple, if you buried it, how did the defense attorneys know to cross-examine you on it yesterday?
I do not know.
Do you have any idea when the defense attorneys learned about this ammunition?
No, I do not.
Do you know who they learned it from?
No.
Those are some important inquiries. Those are all the questions I have for Ms. Popple, but we'd like to take additional testimony.
All right. I thought I had one more question.
Oh, and I'm sorry. Would it refresh your memory about whether or not you're supposed to write a report within 24 hours if you?
I don't think that was in dispute. I think he,
All right.
all right, right? Never mind. Okay, so you're off the witness stand. Do we want to leave these out, or do we want to gather them up?
I think they need to be vouchered and kept, obviously.
Well, okay, so it'll be Court's Exhibit 12? Is that how you want to do it?
Yes, I think it should be a court exhibit, since this is a hearing, yes.
Okay, Court's 12. And my only question is, do you want them back in the, do you plan to examine anybody with these?
They have to be, get to the courthouse so we can, yes. All right.
Well, she divided them all up is my only point. So is she going to keep coming back and dividing them up, or what are we going to do?
I think yesterday there was some testimony that I think was frankly just misleading, that none of the,
No, this is my question.
Yes.
You all, okay. What do you want to do with that? Because if you're asking a witness, then we're going to have to pile them out of there, and somebody's going to have to line them up and identify what's this, what's this, okay? So do you want them staying out like this, or do you want them in the bag? That's all, that's my question for the day.
I think they should remain vouchered, and they're open like any voucher would be at a trial, when and if a witness is questioned about them.
Okay, so here's my question. If I put them back in the bag, they're all going to be commingled, and you may not recognize them, so you can cross-examine appropriately or examine appropriately, okay? You're lay people. You have knowledge. I don't need to go into it. That's my only question. Want it in the bag, or do you want it out?
So what I would ask is, let us quickly just photograph it, and then we'll ask CST Popple to put it back, actually. but remain at the courthouse. That's what I would ask.
All right. Is that okay?
Absolutely. My question for the court is, are we going to complete this motion hearing?
No, we're not going to complete it yet. Okay, I'm going to,
And can you just give us an idea so that we can be prepared for how you intend to proceed with regard to the motion hearing?
I'm going to have Hancock come up. You're going to call Seth Kenny, and I would like, I don't know why we can't do Seth Kenny's testimony if he's coming. Did you call him as a witness?
Sure, he's being called as a
Okay, well,
witness.
you should be prepared to call him. So we're going to do both, and I'm going to hear both.
So we're going to hear from these witnesses outside the presence of the jury and then in front of the jury?
Oh, you're right about that. Thank you.
That's my issue.
Thank you for pointing that out. Well, other than telling the jury to leave for the and come back at 3, which I'm not going to do to them, I'm going to continue the testimony, and he would. Well, you said actually. I'm now thinking why can't the jury hear this? They heard Popple.
I'm sorry?
They heard Popple.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not making a comment on whether or not the defense gets to bring this in front of the jury. I'm making a commentary on the jury doesn't hear our motion hearing, and I just want to.
Oh, they're not going to hear.
motion
Okay.
hearing.
I'm going to take evidence from each of these folks. Do you have, is this a problem? So I don't know what I'm going to do yet, so this is why I want to do it this way, okay? I want Hancock on the stand. You can question her about this issue, okay? Seth Kenny comes, you're going to do all of his testimony, including this, okay? Bowles is separate. He wasn't going to be testifying, okay? And on Bowles' testimony, the jury will leave, okay? And anything further on this motion, the jury will leave. But I think that they can do Hancock and Kenny in front of the jury.
Can Mr. Spiro and I approach?
Sure.
Wow. This is super interesting. So, what do you all think? Do you think it really all goes down to, did the state intentionally bury this evidence? And if so, does it matter? So it matters to me that if they intentionally buried evidence, that matters. Just in general, it matters, right? But I keep going back to the fact that no one is questioning whether Alec Baldwin brought ammunition onto the set. And no one is questioning whether Alec Baldwin put bullets in the gun. And no one is questioning whether the question for Alec Baldwin is, was he reckless? Did he use recklessness? Was there something foreseeable? And I think part of the issue is, with this whole idea of bringing guns onto these bullets onto the set, could he have reasonably known that there were bullets on this live rounds on the set? And I think the going assumption on movie sets is that there are never live rounds on the set. But I think what's going to have to be ruled on is whether this particular excuse me, now I got the hiccups. Uh-oh. Gonna have to talk through these hiccups. So what's gonna have to be ruled on is whether the evidence in question it matters. And if so, if if that evidence in question is relevant to the case, and relevant to Alec's case specifically, then it could lead to a dismissal or at least a mistrial. And yeah, you know, it does really beg the question, why would they log it under a different, you know, case number or whatever? They're saying they basically logged it under a different number. Yeah, that's what I've been doing, Johnny, but it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to hold your breath and talk at the same time. You know, excuse me one moment. I've been holding my breath and taking big swallows of my drink. My little lemonade drink here. I still got my hiccups. But but this is yes, this is a breathtaking a hiccup making this is a hiccup making turn of events. I've been checking out Twitter to see what people are saying on Twitter about all of this. And let me read to you while we're waiting for them to come back on. Let me read to you what was written in the motion by the defense about this, okay? And it says, on March 6, 2024, Teskey, this is the gentleman who came to the precinct after Hannah's conviction. Okay, so continuing to read. Teskey delivered the collection of rounds to Papel, where it was taken into the custody of the state by Papel and her supervisor, Lieutenant Brian Brandel. The evidence, however, was not inventoried to the Rust case. Instead, at Brandel's instruction, Papel was told to log it as documented information rather than physical evidence. And she was told to log it under a different case file. I wonder what case file it was. So that it would never be disclosed to the defense. Now that's an assumption, saying so that it would never be disclosed to the defense. That's their presumption. Okay.
Tell Steve to bring the jury.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, force yourself to hit up. I've never. How do you force
After
yourself to hit up?
I call in the jury, this is on the record. I got to tell you. After I call in the jury, I'm taking a bathroom break, and we're probably taking a break for a good 20 minutes or half an hour even. Okay?
Oh boy.
Just want to settle.
Okay.
We're bringing him in right now.
Yes, he's calling him in.
Okay.
You're gonna make me break into song, Patricia. I was thinking earlier when I saw Cinnamon. Every time I see Cinnamon come in, I think of I wanna be with my cinnamon girl. Songs come into my mind randomly all the time. So I want to wind back. There was a part that I missed earlier where Spyro apparently got up and said that he said that the prosecution, the state was signaling. They have pictures of the state signaling witnesses. So let me see if this is where he says it here.
Ask Mr. Nichols to address the court on the
Oh,
motion.
okay,
This is
fine.
just a quick, and if it takes out of our time, it does. But, I get many sort of inbound emails that I don't obviously read everyone or take everyone seriously, but I got one last night that indicated that the cameras are catching Miss Morrissey signaling witnesses while they're on the witness stand. And, I really.
Did you look to see if that was true?
I was sent a photograph that concerned me, and I felt obligated. And like I said to the court, I try to not make these issues. This is a high pressure case. I've been in many. There have been more issues in this case than I have ever seen in all of those cases combined. And so I'm sort of at a loss, but to bring it to the court's attention. So I've asked them to print me the photograph that was sent to me. I can't just continue to give the benefit of the doubt on every single thing that's occurred in this case. I just can't. And so I'll be turning that into the court. And I would just say, at every turn of this, right, it's from the original case. It was, I understand and very much respect the court's rulings on everything, frankly. In the grand jury, it survived, and there's no remedy. I get that. And they destroyed the gun and we have that hearing and there's no remedy. And I get that. And it's just at a certain point in the Brady discipline.
I did give you a remedy, but okay.
Well,
I didn't give you the remedy you wanted, but yes.
Fair enough. But one might say not a remedy given all of the circumstances that has a meaningful impact at this trial. And so, and then we had the Brady disclosures, and I could keep going and I'm not going to because we've limited time. But there's just never been any. It's just, I don't know how much of it can happen with it.
Okay, let's do this. Where's the picture?
I'm having somebody print it.
Okay, all right. I am aware of what you're saying, but look, first I have to see the picture, okay? Now, let's go to the arguments of this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then you can, show me what you're talking about. And I did get it, so thank you.
You're welcome, Your Honor. Since we did submit the written briefing, I will try to be brief, but I think it'd be helpful to build out some of the facts so Your Honor has the chronology of how this happened and has the factual pieces to understand the severity of what's happened.
Okay.
So on November 1st, 2021, shortly after the Rust incident, Seth Kenny's on the...
Just one moment. I need Faith to get me my notebook.
Of course.
Okay, so this is from earlier in case you're confused. I wanted to go back earlier because I had missed the very, very beginning of this morning's. Y'all are getting earworms in my ears with Fleetwood Mac because I love Gold Dust Woman and all of that. And I'm very, very jealous that you saw Fleetwood Mac or you saw Stevie Nicks. I've never seen Fleetwood Mac or Stevie Nicks live. That would be really fun. But anyway, I hadn't seen the very beginning of this where there were accusations that Morrissey was signaling witnesses. And I've been thinking as my hiccups start to go away, well, they're still there, but they're getting better. I've been thinking through this, thinking about this, I'm trying to figure out the most coherent way to say what I'm about to say. So noticed, I'm so jealous, Patricia. So jealous, Patricia. You just can't help but notice with the Karen Reed trial, right? That whether or not the state was corrupt in that trial, it probably helped all the accusations about corruption and the state's misconduct in that trial, and then the fact that there was so much just what's the best word I can think to use for it? Just fuckery. I mean, someone's thinking about you. That's cute, Johnny. There was such fuckery in the Karen Reed investigation. Just the, the shoddiness of the investigation, the sloppiness of it. There were things that even if they weren't doing things to be corrupt, they really could look corrupt. And then you have those horrible text messages from Michael Proctor and all that stuff. So all of that came out, and the case itself was presented so badly by the state in that trial that and I called it. I'm going to pat myself on the back. I called it. It led to a mistrial, right? The jury was just hopelessly hung, and now we're starting to hear all these conflicting reports about how actually the jury had voted to exonerate her. They had voted to exonerate her. Like the jury was not quite as conflicted as some of the jurors are saying. That's going to have to get played out. We'll have to see how that gets played out. But all this to say that I think maybe, people like Alec Baldwin and other defendants are like, hey, let's try the old corruption defense. Now, I know it's not a novel defense. It's not the first time that people have tried the corruption and conspiracy defense. But with Karen Reed, it's the first time you really saw it take hold and kind of work in the defense's favor, because there was clearly so much gross shit happening, right? So that's what I keep going to. Now, in this situation, in this particular case, as I've been saying in the chat, these lawyers have been going back and forth behind the scenes in pretrial motions leading up to this trial the entire time. They don't like each other. They've never liked each other. There's always been tension between all of these attorneys and these representatives. But it is kind of shocking to hear that this evidence wasn't put in. It was brought in. There's two. You could look at it from both sides, right? So this person comes into a precinct, says, hey, here's some evidence for you. It gets logged in a different case file, but it doesn't, a police report isn't written up about it for a full month, right? For a full month. So why those things? There could be completely innocent explanations, and I think that's what Papel tried to explain on the stand. But then you look at the other side of it. If it was, they need to understand, as they needed to understand that there's still a trial pending, a very important trial. And they also need to understand that they already are kind of under a magnifying glass with their investigation, because not only is this a high profile case, but also one of their key pieces of evidence has been destroyed by the FBI. And that looks kind of shady too. So I don't know. This is I don't know. Things are this is going to be interesting. So what now, the way the judge has kind of laid things out is she's basically going to make a ruling on this motion later, after additional witnesses testify, as both part of separate hearings without the jury, and when witnesses come in to testify for this trial. So it's kind of like there's almost like two layers to this trial going on at the same time. Two things are being decided. Is Alec Baldwin guilty, and will this trial continue? Both of those things are being decided at the same time. I mean, usually those things are happening at the same time, but this is on a more finer point because of the things that are being raised here. The other thing that is important for is for us to understand is that it is a little bit sketchy that this evidence was turned in after Hannah's conviction, right? By a friend of Hannah's, by someone who's connected to Hannah. Also, how did this come to the attention of the defense? Did they contact the defense themselves? How did it come to the attention of the defense? So that'll be probably part of the the hearing process. But no, I agree, Patricia. Sometimes I'm impressed by what the FBI does. Sometimes I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, sometimes I'm blown away by the incompetence. So I honestly think it varies from location to location, from agent to agent. Seriously. So I'm going to keep playing this hearing because I honestly think it's probably interesting to rewatch this hearing. There were a lot of fiery moments, a lot of awkward moments. The judge is in rare form in this hearing because she was pissed many times. But I'm also going to look around while we're watching this and see if there are some reactions on Twitter and YouTube about this.
My notebook, I brought it up yesterday. Might even be in my computer bag. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. I'll take notes on this. All right, go ahead.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. So November 1st, 2021, Seth Kenney is on a phone call with Corporal Hancock. At that point, we've heard about Seth Kenney's involvement in this, his effort to pry into what's going on with the prop card and the bullets. And so on that phone call, he's telling Corporal Hancock, then Detective Hancock, that he believes he knows where the live bullet came from. He dials in a guy named Teskey, who we heard about yesterday in testimony. Teskey gets on the line and Seth says, tell Detective Hancock what you know. And he says, well, Fel Reed dropped off a batch of live ammunition at my business because I have a safer place to store it. And after that, Fel shows up, grabs some of the live ammunition and leaves some behind. And that's what I know. And Seth says, well, that could be from the same batch that killed Helena Hutchins. Could be a match. He says, and it's Del Reed and it's Hannah Gutierrez Reed. That's the one who's responsible here, pushing it off on Gutierrez Reed as the source of the live ammunition, just as the state has done in this case. He says, thank you very much. He gets off the phone. Fell says, Teskey says, I'll take a picture. I'm not in front of my computer, not in front of my ammunition. I'll send it in an hour. He sends a picture of 4 bullets. Ms. Morrissey is going to hold that up to you and say, these are the 4 bullets you knew about this. That was from 2021. Detective Hancock does not preserve the other live ammunition that's at Teskey's property, even though he told her this could be from the live ammunition batch that matches the bullet that killed Helena Hutchins. 2 years later, November 2nd, 2023, there's a PTI of Teskey. Ms. Morrissey's asking questions, and she starts probing further into the live ammunition that Teskey had previously said was given to him by Fel Reed. And she says, do you still have some of that ammunition? He says, well, some of it, but I've been out shooting it over the last 2 years because Detective Hancock did not preserve it over that time period. Ms. Morrissey probes further. Where'd it come from? Tell me your story. He says, well, Fel dropped it off. He then picked some up, and he went with Seth Kenney to the 1883 Yellowstone movie, where he was teaching people how to shoot with that live ammunition. He then went to another movie with Seth Kenney, teaching people how to shoot with that live ammunition. And Seth Kenney then took a green ammo can with that live ammunition in it and brought it home with him. He says that could be the live ammunition from that green ammo can that killed Helena Hutchins. Ms. Morrissey says, I want you to preserve that. And do you think there's any evidence that this was sabotage? And he says, well, actually, Seth Kenney called me while Rust was shooting, telling me he wanted to get Hannah Gutierrez Reed fired, but he didn't know how to do it because he was concerned about upsetting Fel Reed, significant armor in the business, as Your Honor knows. And so he says, I don't have evidence that there was sabotage, but that's what I know, and I still have this ammunition. As we know, Sarah Zachary, the one who threw the live bullets away, or bullets away, we don't know, live or not, threw bullets away after.
I need to hear this again. I need to hear that last part again. I'm sorry, I'm winding it back a tiny bit. Hey, Molly Lollipops, nice to see you. By the way, everyone, please remember to hit the like button. Thank you very much. Because I missed this part earlier about Seth Kenney trying to sabotage Hannah Gutierrez on the job. Hold on a moment.
So Your Honor has the chronology of how this happened and has the factual pieces to understand the severity of what's happened.
Okay.
So on November 1st, 2021, shortly after the Rust incident, Seth Kenney's on the...
Just one moment. I need Faith to get me my notebook.
Of course.
My notebook. I brought it up yesterday. Might even be in my computer bed. Okay.
Thank you so much, Anonymous. So good to see you again.
Seth Kenney is on a phone call with Corporal Hancock. At that point, we've heard about Seth Kenney's involvement in this, his effort to pry into what's going on with the prop card and the bullets. And so on that phone call, he's telling Corporal Hancock, then Detective Hancock, that he believes he knows where the live bullet came from. He dials in a guy named Teskey, who we heard about yesterday in testimony. Teskey gets on the line and Seth says, tell Detective Hancock what you know. And he says, well, Fel Reed dropped off a batch of live ammunition at my business because I have a safer place to store it. And after that, Fel shows up, grabs some of the live ammunition and leaves some behind.
Oh, yay. We see who's a member. Molly Lollipops became a member because of Anonymous. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that's what I know. And Seth says, well, that could be from the same batch that killed Helena Hutchins. Could be a match. He says, and it's Del Reed and it's Hannah Gutierrez Reed. That's the one who's responsible here, pushing it off on Gutierrez Reed as the source of the live ammunition, just as the state has done in this case. He says, thank you very much. He gets off the phone. Fell says, Teskey says, I'll take a picture. I'm not in front of my computer, not in front of my ammunition. I'll send it in an hour. He sends a picture of 4 bullets.
Oh, yay. Patricia's a member now, too. Woo.
Ms. Morrissey is going to hold that up to you and say, these are the 4 bullets you knew about this. That was from 2021. Detective Hancock does not preserve the other live ammunition that's at Teskey's property, even though he told her this could be from the live ammunition batch that matches the bullet that killed Helena Hutchins. 2 years later, November 2nd, 2023.
Okay, that's interesting. So this guy who came to the precinct after Hannah's conviction, he contacted police in 2021 about this. So it's not like he just randomly showed up.
There's a PTI of Teskey. Ms. Morrissey's asking questions, and she starts probing further into the live ammunition that Teskey had previously said was given to him by Thel Reed. And she says, do you still have some of that ammunition? He says, well, some of it, but I've been out shooting it over the last 2 years because Detective Hancock did not preserve it over that time period. Ms. Morrissey probes further. Where'd it come from? Tell me your story. He says, well, Thel dropped it off. He then picked some up, and he went with Seth Kenny to the 1883 Yellowstone movie, where he was teaching people how to shoot with that live ammunition. He then went to another movie with Seth Kenny, teaching people how to shoot with that live ammunition. And Seth Kenny then took a green ammo can with that live ammunition in it and brought it home with him. He says that could be the live ammunition from that green ammo can that killed Helena Hutchins. Ms. Morrissey says, I want you to preserve that. And do you think there's any evidence that this was sabotage? And he says, well, actually, Seth Kenny called me while Rust was shooting, telling me he wanted to get Hannah Gutierrez Reed fired, but he didn't know how to do it because he was concerned about upsetting Thel Reed, significant armor in the business, as your Honor knows. And so he says, I don't have evidence that there was sabotage, but that's what I know, and I still have this ammunition. As we know, Sarah Zachary, the one who threw the live bullet.
Okay. I got to hear that little part again, because now we're hearing about how this could possibly be a sabotage plot involving Seth Kenny. Okay. Wow. Hold up here.
Into the live ammunition that Teskey had previously said was given to him by Thel Reed. And she says, do you still have some of that ammunition? He says, well, some of it, but I've been out shooting it over the last 2 years because Detective Hancock did not preserve it over that time period. Ms. Morrissey probes further. Where'd it come from? Tell me your story. He says, well, Thel dropped it off. He then picked some up, and he went with Seth Kenny.
So again, this is the same gentleman speaking, the same person who turned in these bullets after Hannah's conviction. At this point, he's on the phone speaking to State Prosecutor Morrissey. So this information has been made available. If the bullets haven't, the information has been made available to the state since 2021. Okay.
To the 1883 Yellowstone movie, where he was teaching people how to shoot with that live ammunition. He then went to another movie with Seth Kenney, teaching people how to shoot with that live ammunition. And Seth Kenney then took a green ammo can with that live ammunition in it and brought it home with him. He says that could be the live ammunition from that green ammo can that killed Helena Hutchins. Ms. Morrissey says, I want you to preserve that. And do you think there's any evidence that this was sabotage? And he says, well, actually, Seth Kenney called me while Rust was shooting, telling me he wanted to get Hannah Gutierrez Reed fired, but he didn't know how to do it because he was concerned about upsetting Thel Reed.
So this is what is shocking to me. Are we suggesting, is the suggestion by this kid that Seth Kenney would bring live bullets, live rounds to the set to sabotage it and risk getting people fucking killed? Is that what they're saying?
Significant armor in the business, as Your Honor knows. And so he says, I don't have evidence that there was sabotage, but that's what I know, and I still have this ammunition. As we know, Sarah Zachary, the one who threw the live bullets away, we don't know, live or not, threw bullets away after the incident on Rust, admitted that.
And that is true. So this woman, Sarah, and if I'm understanding it correctly, Sarah, the prop master, worked for Seth. Seth had a company that, had the props, and then he hired Sarah to be the on-set prop master, the person who managed the props on set day to day, and Hannah as well. But Sarah and Hannah were like sharing duties, and they were overtaxed. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking, Johnny. Anonymous, I don't know if you're talking about the charges against Alec, but they actually did say that they initially dropped the charges, and then they recharged him after the lab results came back. And the thing that triggered them to test the gun was his interview with George Stephanopoulos. They actually said that in court yesterday, that it was his interview with George Stephanopoulos that triggered them to actually do that test. Yeah. So.
Was on set, texting with Seth Kenney, angry with Hannah. On the license, the ATF report for the Pieta that was involved in this accident, she was on set. They were close, we know that. And so Ms. Morrissey says, you hold on to that evidence and I'll come get it, in essence. She never does. November 20.
Wow.
2023. Fast forward to March 6, 2024, the end of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's trial. Teskey's in Santa Fe, sees what happens, shows up at the sheriff's office, as we heard from Ms. Popple, and delivers that live ammunition that Hancock had not preserved, that Ms. Morrissey had not collected, that he believed could be from the same batch, from that same green ammo can that we care about, that matched the bullet that killed Helena Hutchins. We heard, Your Honor, what Ms. Popple did with it. They buried it. I'd like to say charitably that it was under the pile of the 5501 information that they didn't disclose, but that's even too charitable because they put it under a different case with a different number. We asked March 26th, we want all of the ammunition from the Rust set that you've collected. April 16th, we show up for that viewing. We want all the live ammunition from the Rust set that you collected. It's not there. After Teskey had turned it in, after Ms. Popple had created the report, the supplemental report she said she created when she took this in and did not disclose to us, it was not there. Now, Your Honor, we don't know if it's a live ammunition match or not. But what we do know is the state had it. It's disclosable under Giglio. It's disclosable under 5501. And there's a case on point, Your Honor, State versus Allison, where the criminal defendant had been charged with conspiracy, aggravated assault, dishonest related crimes. And he had an arrest record in the prosecution's possession. He had a statement and an arrest record. It was not disclosed under 5501. The criminal defendant shows up at trial and testifies. He's a great guy, honest, no criminal record. The prosecution whips out his arrest record and his statement, disclosable under 5501, which it never disclosed, and said not true. Court breaks. Defendant says, you didn't disclose that under 5501. And the prosecution says, who cares? He's up on the stand lying.
Mr. Magoo. Yeah, that's a good one. So what I'm seeing on Twitter right now is apparently the judge has actually sent the jury home for the day so that they can get through these motions, so that they can hear all these motions. So actually, that's a big deal. If what I'm seeing is right, and I'm seeing several different accounts and news reports about this, but we'll see when they actually come back from their half-hour break what they actually say. But apparently the jury has been sent home. But we'll still be here. I was planning to take the afternoon off because I'm going out of town this weekend, and I have some stuff to do, but I'm super interested in seeing this through, though. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
This would not have been favorable to him at all. And so, Judge, I want a continuance. Give them a continuance. That's their remedy. Come back tomorrow. I'll disclose everything. I'll make it all right. And then we'll continue. Trial court says, fine, I'll give you that continuance. Limited remedy. You'll have all the information. Do with it what you will. If it's negative, fine. If it's not, that's for you to use at trial. He's convicted. It gets appealed. It ends up in the Supreme Court of New Mexico. That decision was reversed. The continuance is not adequate in those circumstances. They're in the middle of trial. The defendant would have done things differently. The defendant would have opened differently, would have asked questions differently. Too much about where the source, in this case, of the live bullet came in before this was presented at trial. The court said it doesn't matter if the defendant knew or should have known of it. What we're talking about here is not the defendant's knowledge, not whether it matches, not matches, not whether his criminal arrest record would have hurt him or not. We're talking about the conduct of the prosecution. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, Your Honor. We're talking about a prosecution that didn't preserve those bullets, that didn't collect them at all, that didn't turn them over, that we already have a 5501 culpability finding with respect to the last set of information. And Your Honor,
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't that affect Hannah's case as well? I mean, I don't know. I could be way off base. We need to hear both sides here, but wow, this is crazy.
The bottom line is we've got 501 violation, culpability. We don't need to show bad faith. We've got a Brady violation. We've got a Giglio violation. Now, this is critical evidence in the case that was never disclosed to us. We heard Ms. Morrissey say, I'm going to have Detective Hancock come in and testify. We could have Ms. Popple testify. They could say it doesn't match, et cetera, et cetera. It does not matter. It did not matter in Allison. We were entitled to it. A continuance is not a sufficient remedy. This case should be dismissed, Your Honor. This is over and over and over and over again. And Your Honor, you've given them a fair chance. You said, grand jury, as Mr. Spiro said, I'm going to give you a remedy on Trumbetta. I'm going to limit it. I'm going to give you your remedy. You've given them more than enough opportunities, Your Honor. This is not the first time. It's not the second time. It's not even the third time. It's time for this case to be dismissed, Your Honor. That's what Brady requires. That's what Giglio requires. That's what 501 requires. As Your Honor knows, we've got remedies in the alternative, but this is the one that's right for this moment. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Ms. Morrissey?
I need to use the monitor. Your Honor, there have been absolutely no violations of our obligations as prosecutors. I want to walk you through everything that has occurred in this regard, everything that these defense attorneys knew well before today, and everything that was also disclosed to Ms. Gutierrez's counsel. So what you can see from the transcript of Mr. Teskey's interview during the Gutierrez case prior to her trial is that Mr. Teskey is Thel Reed's close friend. And Mr. Teskey stores Mr. Reed's ammunition. And the reason that he stores it for Mr. Reed is because Mr. Reed lives in a single wide mobile home that doesn't have a lot of security. And because he's a professional armorer, he has a bunch of guns and ammunition. Mr. Teskey is a retired police officer who has a whole bunch of security at his property. So Thel Reed has 300 rounds of live .45 caliber ammunition. And he and Seth Kinney are hired by the producers for the show 1883. Everything that I want you to know, Your Honor, everything that I'm telling the court, Mr. Bowles has this information and these people have this information. So nothing I'm telling the court is new. So they get hired on this to do what's called a cowboy training on the set of 1883. So the cowboy training is where gun experts, that being Thel Reed and Seth Kinney, take the actors to shoot real guns with real ammunition so that they have a better idea of the recoil and how the gun is actually supposed to look and to help them with their acting techniques. In fact, the fact that production companies do this was actually something that Mr. Baldwin pointed out to Detective Hancock during his interview. He himself has done this with a production company. So when they're through with the cowboy training camp in Texas, they've got some rounds left over. And Seth Kinney says, I'm going to take these, and Thel Reed lets him take them. So, and let me back up. When they originally went to the cowboy training camp in Texas, they didn't take all of Thel's ammunition. They took a certain amount of it, and Thel left some in Troy Teskey's garage. All of this ammunition came.
All your,
Detective Hancock.
Okay, we are back on real time now. This is real time. They are back in court. The jury has been sent home. So now we're just going to be entertaining these motions. And this is high stakes for Baldwin here. This is going to decide whether this trial moves forward. In certain low security prisons, they can watch certain TV. I'm pretty sure they can watch court TV on their tablets and stuff. And they have TVs in the like common rooms and the pods and things. She's in a women's prison in Santa Fe. I know that. I'm fairly certain it's low security or, you know, minimal security. I mean, this is a pretty big deal. This is very high stakes for these lawyers. This is like make or break for the trial for these lawyers here. And, you know, I guess the idea I keep coming back to in my mind is that well, that's true, Johnny. I was just speaking. Hey, Ruckdon, Jean Valjean. I was just speaking to do the prisoners have access? If she's going to testify, I don't think she's. It really depends on whether they have a don't watch order. It really depends on the witness, but there's also lots of rumors swirling around that she's going, even if she gets called to testify, she's just going to plead the fifth. Yeah, me too, Daz. So for anyone who's just joining or doesn't know what's going on, the jury has been sent home. There is a major issue that's been raised about possible exculpatory evidence, a possible Brady violation, which means that it's possible that the state withheld evidence that could have been used in this case, could have changed the case. And that's what's at stake here. So if at the end of these motions, the judge finds that the evidence that was withheld was relevant to this trial and that the state withheld it, you know, I'm not sure what the word would be, but they wouldn't that they shouldn't have withheld it, basically. Then this could end. This case would either be dismissed or it could end in a mistrial. Terry says, "Smoke and mirrors. The issue is that the waiter is off today, so no one is getting their water topped off." I love my chat. Y'all are so funny. uh, so this will be very interesting, and it's interesting when, you know, the jury's not even there, and it could make or break a case. It could these arguments could determine whether this case goes forward. And I'm sure that even if Hannah's not watching, she's getting, I don't know, but some kind of updates from her lawyer. Yeah, they definitely have it muted. They usually mute it whenever any of the lawyers are talking to the judge at the bench. Court TV mutes it for us. So no, they don't want us to listen to whatever they're gossiping about at the bench or fussing about or whatever. But you know, the idea that Seth Kenney wanted to get Hannah Gutierrez fired, you know, I know that this guy has a very sketch reputation. Is it sketch enough to go to the extent of he was okay with allowing live rounds to go on a set to risk multiple people's lives by putting live rounds on a set? Or, you know, was he talking about something a little bit more, you know, just some sort of professional smear campaign that could get her fired, you know? Because that type of stuff, that happens all the time. Subterfuge and sabotage, that happens in the professional work environment, unfortunately, all the damn time. In fact, you know, my former boss from Apple, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, when I left Apple, she was so pissed at me that she was sabotaging job interviews at other places because they were calling her for references, and I would find out later that she was just spreading absolutely salacious lies about me, and it didn't end up affecting my career, but that's just the type of stuff that happens. That's just the type of stuff that happens, and it's unfortunate. But you know, I could never. Yeah, she was a B, Sharon. She was a B. She was actually a notorious B in the industry. Everybody knew that about her. So, in fact, that's one of the reasons people told me about it. You know, one of the people who was interviewing me for a job told me that she did that. She was like, "We know what she's like." They were like, "We know what she's like." We were just trying to get a reference. Yeah, and if there's any truth to this idea that, you know, Seth Kenney was trying to sabotage a job for somebody, and in doing so allowed live rounds to get onto a set, he could be guilty of manslaughter. I don't know the laws surrounding that, But I mean, what a horrific thing to do. Yeah, it seems that way, Sharon. I think it seems that way. It seems like the higher people go in their career, they find that most people to get to where they are had to lie or cheat or steal or something in one way, shape, or form. You really don't have to do that to excel, but people find that they have, in order to compete with the liars and the cheaters, they have to lie and cheat too, and then it just becomes this horrifying, lawless cycle, you know. And that's my big complaint with YouTube and the way YouTube works, is that it incentivizes that behavior. It incentivizes it because yeah, you, you know, in order to get the most attention on social media, you know, in order to make the most money on social media, you get attention. In order to get the most attention, you do the most outrageous things, the things that evoke fear and outrage, right? The highest emotions. That's how you keep people's attention. So in order to evoke people's fear and outrage, you do outrageous, horrible things. You say outrageous, horrible things. You incite fear, or you incite violence. So, and then the artificial intelligence is learning from that behavior. And then saying, this is our work sample that we're taking from. The artificial intelligence is saying, here's our work sample. All this horrible behavior that's being incentivized by, by the internet. Do you see how I go on and on about this? Because it's bad enough that it's already incentivized in real life, just because people, people are able to be corrupt and then corrupt other people. But then the fact that it's actually systematized on a global scale. Hey, Teresa, nice to see you. That it's systematized on a global scale to the tune of 4 billion people across the globe. It's basically, the social media is just systematizing corruption. I mean, it is so it's so infuriating to somebody like me who did public relations for that industry. It's outrageous because I was the one saying, oh no, we believe in your privacy and your safety. We want what's best for you users. But, and then to find out that it was all bullshit is really, thank you all. You're great. They're clearly having issues with, I think they've called, I was thinking about this earlier. This is one of the reasons that attorneys in trial never sleep. I mean, sleeping is a rarity. And I think that might be Seth Kenney. I think they might be bringing him in right now because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, you just heard this morning that, they just completely switched everything up. So whatever the attorneys were prepared to do with by the end of the day yesterday has all completely changed today. And they have to go, boop, 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 boop. And, when you're one attorney, like it was with John Pryor, you're just hobbled. you can only do what you can do. There's a close up. People were asking about what is Stephen Baldwin holding there. See, it's the headphones from the court. I think he has hearing impairment issues, and it just appears like he's holding them such that they won't hurt him or rest on his chest or something like that. That's what it seems like to me. But anyway, so these attorneys, they have to sometimes they have to change course and prepare. They have to write another like 15-page motion right in the middle of trial. Or they have to bring in an entire, like a new box of evidence that they didn't anticipate bringing in for another 3 days. So they have to go back to their office and haul that in, and hopefully it's ready. But if it's not, they have to get it ready. That's why lawyers, first of all, make the big bucks. And second of all, rarely sleep during these trials. And also that's why judges get so irritated when lawyers are not organized, or when they don't have their, and they don't know the local rules, the local court rules. And not knowing the local court rules, there's no excuse. They're always printed on the court website. There's no excuse. And this is kind of a funny little personal story. I was married. I'm sure they do, Johnny. At least to some sort of a stimulant. Absolutely, because they got it's incredibly stressful. And I was just about to get into my at the very least, they're addicted to caffeine. My ex-husband is an attorney, right? And after we got divorced, I had to take him to court for a reason I won't get into. It had nothing to do with custody, nothing to do with our kids. It was a completely different matter. But one of the things he did, my attorney husband, was when he filed one of his filings in our court case, is he was supposed to file a 5-page motion, and he filed something like a 20-page motion. And the judge was pissed. He was like, Mr. Attorney, husband, there is no excuse for a practicing attorney to file a motion that is 15 pages longer than the local rules call for. The local rules are, available right on our website. And not only that, you are a practicing attorney here in our jurisdiction. I mean, it was actually kind of funny, and luckily I had a great lawyer. I wasn't stupid enough to try to represent myself. And I ended up prevailing in that case, which was, also interesting because he was a lawyer and I wasn't. Yeah, wrist slap emoji. We should get a wrist slap emoji. Oh. Yeah, I mean, I would hope that most attorneys at the end of the day take a nice stoner break and calm themselves down. There is very, very little wrong with taking a nice 420 break at the end of the day and calming your brain. That's why it's being legalized around the world. That's why it's being legalized around the world. At least in the United States. Okay, Steve, come over here. I know, Johnny. Oh, isn't that cute? That seems very, I'm sure they do this in their own home, but is that necessary? Do you think that's, are they always that affectionate? Look at Stephen Baldwin looking on like, oh, come on, you guys, you're not usually that affectionate with each other. I'm kidding. Yeah, she does. So I finally found the thing that I was looking for yesterday on Twitter. Um, and maybe while we're waiting for this, maybe I'll show it to you because it's very quick. I got it right here. Yeah. This is like and Lauren's right in the back. Hey, let me show this to you. Look what happens here. She just looks at him and starts twirling her finger like turn around, turn around, turn around. And then he did and then he that's pretty funny. They're talking to it, they're having a whole conversation, and then she's like, turn around. He smiles, he nods his head. He's like, and she's like, turn around. And then he looks up to heaven like, oh my God. And Lauren was back there too. We're like, hey, Lauren. Oh man. It's Johnny, I agree that it is a loving gesture. I'm not saying it just felt very put on for the cameras. That's just how it felt to me. It's just how it felt. I'm sure it's really stress. Look, I have compassion for everyone, right? I really do. I'm able to sit here and understand how people feel, even if they are being accused of a heinous crime. It is sort of a gun gesture. I don't think she really meant it that way, Patricia. But anyway, I'm able to, look past, okay, this person, they made a mistake, or, they're being accused of something. I can see that they probably feel stress, that they have a range of emotions, right? A range of conflicting emotions. I can see that this man is clearly highly stressed. What are the elements of his stress? Is part of the element of his stress that somebody died? Yes. Is that is there more weight in his mind about how this has affected him? I believe so. Are they changing everything up now? What the hell is going on? What are they doing? Tell us. Bench conference again. Yeah, that's true, Sharon. This particular day, and it's also sort of like sudden onset a little bit. This particular day has to be uber stressful because it's like, oh wow, we find ourselves in a position where the judge may mistrial it or at least dismiss it. Or wait, at least mistrial it or dismiss it. There's Detective Hancock, or I guess they're calling her Corporate Hancock. No, did I say corporate? I meant corporal. Corporal Hancock. Sorry, y'all. I'm looking on Twitter to see if there's a better explanation what's going on at this very moment. Not seeing much. And I promise you, there is no sound. No sound. Looks like they might be getting ready, though. There's some misinformation on I guess this must be the jury. Wait, no. What's going on? Why are they standing up for the judge? It's so oh my, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What are these people doing?
We don't have a fan in this case like Karen Reed. We got the exit sign. So they're taking another little break, obviously orchestrating what they need to do to get both Corporal Hancock on the stand and then Seth Kenney to talk about this evidentiary issue. In the meantime, let's listen now to Hancock again. This is from yesterday. She explains why Alec Baldwin was initially arrested but not charged.
Let me ask you this. The live ammunition that was collected from PDQ, did it just visibly...
I'm going to let this, I need to take a little bit of a bathroom break, you guys, and refresh my drinks. So I'm going to let this play and take that little bit of a break, and I'll be right back.
Look dissimilar to the live ammunition from Rust.
Yes.
Even though it looked dissimilar, did you send it to the FBI for testing anyway?
We did.
Did you ever discover any evidence throughout your entire investigation that Seth Kinney supplied live rounds to the set of Rust?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Seth Kinney was present on the set of Rust until you met him at the prop truck?
No.
During your investigation, did you ever discover any evidence that Mr. Kinney modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Ms. Gutierrez modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever formally arrest Ms. Gutierrez?
No.
Does that have anything to do with whether or not she was ultimately convicted of a crime?
No.
Did you ever arrest Dave Halls?
No.
Do you know whether or not he was convicted of a crime at some point?
Yes, he was.
And the fact that you arrested him or didn't arrest him, did that have anything to do with it?
No.
Does as a law enforcement officer, do you always arrest people who then later are criminally charged?
Sorry, you mean like arrest them right away? And
Do they have to be arrested in order to be criminally charged?
No.
Why would you not arrest someone?
To develop the investigation, if we're still waiting or investigating facts, trying to find information, and to get potential suspects or witnesses, whoever is involved, to cooperate with law enforcement.
Who makes the final charging decision in a criminal case?
The district attorney's office, essentially.
The prosecutor does, right?
Yes.
You guys don't. The law enforcement officers don't, correct?
Right.
Okay, again, testimony from yesterday in the case in front of the jury, but the same witness, Ms. Hancock, the corporal, lead investigator, is going to be back on the stand momentarily in the hearing stage for the motion to dismiss brought by the defense earlier today, and just first thing this morning. Surprise! So Catherine Lizardo is here. Dave Ehrenberg is with me on set. Dave, when we see this witness testify, give me your thoughts on her as a witness, credibility, talking about procedure. What are your thoughts?
Credibility is in the eye of the beholder. I think she looks credible. I mean, she doesn't have an axe to grind here. She's just
But she could be challenged. She's like, you guys screwed up. That's what's going to be coming at her.
Sure. Screw up is different than nefariousness. Was it intentional? Because that's the difference between getting yelled at by the judge and getting a case dismissed. If it's just an accident over something that's not even material evidence, then they're going to survive this. If it is something that is proven to be, insidious and nefarious, to use some good SAT words, then I think the case is gone. But I cannot imagine a high-profile case like this, that this is a big conspiracy to hide evidence that really isn't even that important to the case.
So, Catherine, let me get back to the crux of the case. Here's my closing argument. It takes 15, 20 seconds for Alec Baldwin to look at that gun when it's handed to him as a cold gun and confirm whether or not it is cold. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is 15 seconds of Alec Baldwin's life more important than the life of Helena Hutchins? That's all he had to do to prevent this tragedy. How do you work around that if you're the defense?
Honestly, if I'm a defense, I'd really have a hard time arguing against that because I agree with you, Michael, in terms of that 15 seconds. And on top of that, cardinal rule for handling gun is not to point.
Okay, so they're kind of just generally talking about the case itself now. I'm interested in kind of Twitter reactions and what people are saying just generally in reaction to this. Here's some real-time coverage basically on the scene from Court TV.
The Santa Fe County Courthouse, where it has been an extraordinary Friday morning. The jury showed up for duty, ready to go, hear more testimony. Everybody was in place. But before they were going to begin testimony, the judge heard a motion to dismiss from the defense. And that motion turned out to have some real teeth. And now the jury has been sent home. The remainder of the day, it seems, will be hammering out this motion. At the crux of it is, where did the live ammunition come from? And was there an opportunity from investigators and the prosecution to determine that when someone came forward with ammunition? The defense says that the state dropped the ball. They didn't catalog it, they didn't save it, and more importantly, they didn't tell the defense about it. And now we're hearing these arguments back and forth. Crime and Justice correspondent Matt Johnson was in the courtroom for all of the fireworks. Let's start with, I guess, Judge Summer. Boy, you could feel the energy even through television. What was it like in the courtroom?
She's a strong judge to begin with, no nonsense judge, and you could tell she was visibly upset, questioning these attorneys, their knowledge about this evidence, why it wasn't cataloged correctly. And then she said, attorneys, before you have questions, I want to see the evidence. I have never seen a judge take the evidence, gloves on, put them on, and open the evidence bag. She said, I have questions for this witness before you get to answer or ask any questions. Everyone in the gallery took a deep breath, and we were just in awe of what we were seeing. It was so tense in that courtroom.
Normally we do see these motion to dismiss motions come up during trial, and they're setting the record for later, and the judge denies it. There is something there, and you could even prosecutor Morrissey, who said she had never seen this evidence before today. That's a problem.
It's a big problem. She admitted that she had never seen those rounds that appear to match the deadly round that killed Helena Hutchins. She said that she had never seen the report either. She got that on the record. And she said that this is why I want to call these witnesses to get to the heart of the matter. She said outside of the presence of the jury, she wanted to call Seth Kinney. She said that he was on his way. She wanted Mr. Bowles on the stand. And by all accounts, we thought the testimony was going to resume. But then after they went to that very awkward sidebar after these fireworks in the courtroom, that's when the judge decided to dismiss this jury. But it was interesting, before she brought them in, because the photos hadn't been taken of the ammunition that was separated in front of her bench, they used these big red legal books to block the jury's view of any sort of ammunition and potential evidence that is now evidence in this case, actually, because it's a court evidence.
Clearly after the sidebar, the decision was made to separate testimony in front of the jury from this motion hearing. And we're going to hear from, it sounds like Seth Kenny's on his way to the courthouse right now.
Yep.
And investigator Hancock. Boy, she's going to be on the hot seat right out of the gate after this break.
And Hannah Gutierrez's attorney, Jason Bowles, will now answer questions.
So my question to you is, what was the demeanor? Did anything out of Alec Baldwin, his family? Because this seems to be the potential for a massive win.
You know, he was just leaning in and paying close attention. I left the courtroom with him. I held the door open for him and his wife, and they were all smiles. They seemed very positive, uplifted after this turn of events. I don't think that they thought it was going to go this way. And now, you know, it's anyone's guess. Could the case against him be dismissed today?
Right. And if it is dismissed, likely the state will have an option to refile. But it's a huge issue that they did not catalog this these bullets and this report under the same case file as the Alec Baldwin trial. They created a totally separate file for it, and that, to any layperson, seems a little sketch. Why would you do that?
Well, this is going to the defense's allegations that there is prosecutorial misconduct. And they started out by saying that Carrie Morrissey, the special prosecutor, was signaling witnesses. And then it evolved into this whole evidence thing, and it's under a different file name. Then they were really doubling down on the fact that they were saying that this evidence was being hidden from the defense team.
Yeah, and a reminder that prosecutor Morrissey is a special prosecutor. She was brought in after two other prosecutors had this case. This has all of the signs of the very real potential for a defense motion to dismiss actually landing. We're a long way away from that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly, Anonymous. So at question here is, did the state intentionally bury evidence that could have been used in this trial? Sidebar. That could have intentionally been used in did they intentionally bury this evidence? And if so, was the evidence such that it could lead to a mistrial? Would that evidence have changed the trajectory of this trial and this case? This could very well result in a dismissal today. So, yeah, and court is on. Court looked like they came back, but then they didn't. They like never. They turned the cameras back on. Everybody was assembled, and then they disassembled again. So it looks like they're really trying to get their crap together. They are calling. They're scrambled. I think it's safe to say that they are on a mad scramble at this moment. Everybody on both sides. This is a pinnacle moment in this case. Okay. So let's go back and look at this moment in during the motions hearing this morning, when the judge, and this was pretty significant, how the judge literally came off the bench and put on the gloves and looked at the evidence herself and started asking questions of the witness herself. Because, when we were watching the Karen Reed trial, we were all saying, oh my gosh, like, it's just so weird that that Judge Beverly, she would just break into starting to ask questions of the witness herself. It was so unusual. This judge never or rarely engages the actual witness, right? She sticks to her role. She's a very strong judge. And so what that means, what it signaled when she came off the bench and put on her gloves and started engaging with the witness was, this is serious. This is a serious thing.
Case, correct? Yes. He didn't test any further rounds after the Hannah Gutierrez case? No. Okay. In the Hannah Gutierrez case, can you point out what types he did test from here?
I'm uncertain what types he tested.
This is a witness testifying, Ms. Morrissey. Please stop.
We sent all of the...
All right, let me ask it a different way. Do you recognize any of these types of bullets to have been gathered on the Hannah Gutierrez, on the rough set?
The Starline brass with silver primer are similar to what was collected on set.
And everything that was collected on set went to Ziegler.
Yes.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions, but all case, correct?
Yes.
He didn't test any further rounds after the Hannah Gutierrez case?
No.
Okay.
It puts in context the part at the top of 19, and this goes directly to Mr. Baldwin's.
This is not from today. This is when, this is just a funny moment when Baldwin left the room.
Motivation to lie about pulling the trigger of the gun. I'm 63 years old with 6 kids. I can't rely on luck anymore. He's talking about his career and that he can't rely on luck anymore. This goes exactly to his motivation not to tell the truth. Sorry.
Can we approach briefly?
It puts in context the part at the top of 19.
So this here, I believe, is where the judge tells the lawyers what they're going to have to do, and this is before she sent the jury home and decided, all right, we're gonna take this whole day for this.
If you all want, but I'm going to require that the state, in fact, I'm going to order that the state by 11:30 this morning produce the supplemental report, the file itself and anything in it, and also the rounds.
May I
that-
respond?
I'm
real
not
quick?
finished.
Okay.
And the rounds that
That's when you see, like, judges absolutely irritated. And Morrissey, she's a strong prosecutor, and it feels like she's always pushing the limits, and almost feels like she can always push the limits. But today she's finding what that limit is, right?
that Ms. Popple took from Mr. Teskey.
I want the court to understand that last night, the defense reached out to Ms. Popple and said, we want you to bring the rounds to court tomorrow. And she got their message. And then they reached out to her again and said, no, never mind. We don't want you to bring the rounds to
Thank you,
court
Ms.
tomorrow.
Morrissey.
I
Thank
have
you,
them.
Ms. Morrissey.
I have them.
I don't.
I mean, that's when we know. So you start to see like real irritation, and I don't want these excuses. I don't even know why Morrissey was going in that direction of, well, the defense said to do this, and then they said to do that, and then I don't know where she was going with that, but Judge is not having it today. Judge Summer is not having it today.
Okay, where are they?
They're here. I'll go get her.
All right. Well, actually, I want testimony from Ms. Popple on how she retrieved those. So I don't need the box, tell her. I need Popple.
Hit me, Popple.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Have a seat, talking to the microphone. I would like to read the report. May I see the report?
Yes.
Well, do you want questions first? I have some questions of this witness. Can I open this, Martine?
This is when we knew it was getting super serious.
Anywhere? Like, not in the middle, but I mean, up at the top? Oh. Anywhere's fine. Maybe you need gloves too. Do you have gloves? Can you get some additional? So anywhere, I can just cut into it. Okay.
There should be there's a
time, Alec. No jail time, Alec. You're putting innocent people in jail, Alec Baldwin. Free Palestine, Alec, just one time, and I'll leave you alone.
And the reason you thought it was important is because you thought it reflected what would have happened in the scene, correct?
I understood that there was a mentioning of a firearm in the paperwork, which is why I thought it was important.
Right, because it's actually just because you thought to yourself at the time and that it actually described what he's doing, right?
I believe at the time, yes.
And you said to your fellow officers that you think it's important because it confirms Mr. Baldwin's statements, correct?
I don't recall stating that, but it could be something that I've stated.
And you indicated that you thought it was hers, meaning Ms. Hutchins' paperwork, correct?
I believe that one of those papers does have her name on it, which is why I thought it was hers.
Right. And the other paper that you already testified to, A3, was found around where she fell, correct?
Yes.
And it contains the shot list and the script for that day, correct?
I don't know exactly.
Sorry.
So you have laid the
you
foundation?
Yeah. Did you believe at the time that what you were looking at may have reflected things that were supposed to occur in the church?
Yes.
You also recovered Ms. Hutchins'.
Okay, I've been looking around. They're not back in trial. There isn't much else going on to response to look at other than other people streaming, and I don't want to snipe their streams or anything. So what I'm going to do, except for court TVs, so what I'm going to do is go back to earlier in the hearing. I'm going to go back to earlier in the hearing, which is what we were watching before. We're going to go back to what started this all, so that we can remind ourselves as we are waiting.
Because he was concerned about upsetting Fel Reed, significant armor in the business, as Your Honor knows. And so he says, I don't have evidence that there was sabotage, but that's what I know, and I still have this ammunition. As we know, Sarah Zachary, the one who threw the live bullets away, or bullets away, we don't know, live or not, threw bullets away after the incident on Rust, admitted that. Was on set, texting with Seth Kenney, angry with Hannah, on the license, excuse me, the ATF report for the Pieta that was involved in this accident. She was on set. They were close. We know that. And so Ms. Morrissey says, you hold on to that. evidence, and I'll come get it, in essence. She never does. November 2023. Fast forward to March 6, 2024. The end of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial. Teskey's in Santa Fe. Sees what happens, shows up at the sheriff's office, as we heard from Ms. Popple, and delivers that live ammunition that Hancock had not preserved, that Ms. Morrissey had not collected, that he believed could be from the same batch, from that same green ammo can that we care about, that matched the bullet that killed Helena Hutchins. We heard, Your Honor, what Ms. Popple did with it. They buried it. I'd like to say charitably that it was under the pile of the 5501 information that they didn't disclose, but that's even too charitable because they put it under a different case with a different number. We asked March 26th, we want all of the ammunition from the Rust set that you've collected. April 16th, we show up for that viewing. We want all the live ammunition from the Rust set that you collected. It's not there. After Teskey had turned it in, after Ms. Popple had created the report, the supplemental report she said she created when she took this in and did not disclose to us, it was not there. Now, Your Honor, we don't know if it's a live ammunition match or not. But what we do know is the state had it. It's disclosable under Giglio. It's disclosable under 5501. And there's a case on point, Your Honor, State versus Allison, where the criminal defendant had been charged with conspiracy, aggravated assault, dishonest related crimes. And he had an arrest record in the prosecution's possession. He had a statement and an arrest record. It was not disclosed under 5501.
All right. Let's see Seth Kenny's testimony.
The testimony you'll give in this case.
And how did it relate to what you did?
Well, primarily, he's more than anything, he's a gun coach, and he does work set as an armor.
So how long have you owned PDQ props?
It's been about 12 years, maybe 13.
Okay. And at some point, sir, did you meet a gentleman by the name of Thel Reed?
I did very briefly. Oh, I was aware of Thale Reed because we were on opposite ends. He was working set on Django Unchained, and I was behind the scenes working with the prop master, preparing the weapons that were going to be used by Cast. So I was aware of him then. And then very briefly one day, a prop master brought him into the LA Prop House Arsenal, where I did actually meet him. It wasn't again until about 2018 where we became friends.
Okay. So when the two of you became friends, what did Thel do for a living and how did it relate to what you did?
Well, primarily he's more than anything, he's a gun coach, and he does work set as an armor as well. But something that he's unrivaled in is as being a gun coach. As an armor, he does a fantastic job, or he did back in the day. So he would work set, and on the back end, I would prepare the weapons. For the most part, I work set as little as possible.
Okay. When you say work set, what do you mean?
Actually ending up on a call sheet, being hired by a film production. It could be episodics. It could be any TV show that you might see. Walking Dead, for instance, and then, or it could just be a feature film, like Django Unchained. And so when you are hired by production, you end up being an employee or an independent consultant for that production.
Okay. So working on set was not your thing.
Definitely not my focus.
Okay. And at some point in time, did you and Mr. Reed work on a film together where Mr. Reed was an armorer or a coach, and you were the vendor, the supplier?
That was, it was 1883. It wasn't a feature film. It was more of a, one run episodic. And I had been working with Taylor Sheridan's prop master.
And who's Taylor Sheridan?
Taylor Sheridan is a writer, director of the Paramount production. And he's kind of created his own segment of Americana that's very popular.
Are you talking about Yellowstone in 1883?
Yellowstone 1883, Yellowstone 1923, Mayor of Kingstown, Sicario. He wrote Sicario, both, I believe. Wind River, amazing movie.
Okay.
That was actually the first time that I had been a provider consultant for Taylor Sheridan, was on Wind River.
Okay. Let's jump back to 1883. Describe for the jury, please, how you and Mr. Reed sort of worked together on that series.
Well, I had to push hard to get him onto the crew and hired. And so we talked about it, and I'm fairly tight with a prop master. Again, we've been working together since Wind River. And I convinced him to hire Thale and to keep him on longer than most gun coaches or older persons would be allowed on set. Frankly, the Texas heat was just too much for him. So,
and just so that everyone knows, approximately how old is Mr. Reed now?
Exactly, I don't know, but he's got to be pushing 80.
Okay. So in what capacity was Mr. Reed hired on the set of 1883? Was he a coach or an armorer?
Primarily, he was the gun coach, and he had difficulty with the Texas heat. So I was constantly making sure that he was in an air conditioned environment, and that's not something that a set on Texas allows for.
Sure. So describe for the jury the kind of gun coaching that was being done on 1883.
Well, it involved initially, it was pretty casual, and we were using replicas, and it happened to be Taylor Sheridan's private arena.
When you say replicas, are you talking about real guns or fake guns?
These are fake guns,
Okay.
replicas. Yeah. And so that's where it started. It's kind of a meet and greet and just get some of the basics down. And Thale, he's been doing it for so many decades, 60 plus years as a gun coach and armor. He knows small bite-sized pieces to the actors is best.
Okay.
So
was there coaching sessions that included real firearms?
there were, then at some point it was decided, and I'm not sure who made that decision, that they actually wanted to set up in a private range on a portion of Taylor Sheridan's private ranch with an appropriate backstop and it controls. And that is where the cast, it was a bit of a team building as well, learned about how the functioning of the firearms, and we were mixed between blanks and live. We had live ammunition in one area and then take people off to the side and shoot blanks. And essentially the safe distance on most blanks is about 20 feet. So we would take them away from the firing line and test and train them there. And primarily they had gotten it by that point. They had really understood for their characters what they needed to be and do on set.
So you mentioned that during these coaching sessions, some of the cast was shooting with live ammunition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you recall what kind of caliber weapons the cast was using to shoot that live ammunition from?
It was a mix we had available from memory, 12 gauge birdshot, just the basics of that. I don't think we even touched that ammo. The prop master had some guns that were chambered in .357, I believe, some lever actions. And also in 45 Colt or 45 Long Colt. Both are okay. Both
All right.
terms.
Can you explain to the jury, well, let me ask you this. Do you know where the live ammunition came from that was used in those coaching sessions?
I do.
Where did it come from?
The 45 Long Colt came from Thale. He had a number of reloads that I asked him to bring because at that time it was very difficult to source live ammunition. It was difficult. So he had what turned out to be 325 reloads of 45 Long Colt.
And when you say reload, what are you talking about?
Well, it's once used case. So every case of ammunition starts out as new. And at that point,
What do you mean when you say case?
the actual brass case. So we talk about a round of ammunition. There are 4 components to that. There's the yellowish colored brass case, the primer that is pressed into the base of the case. Then we have gunpowder, some type of, could be black powder, synthetic black powder, modern smokeless powder, and then you need a projectile. And so those four components make up a single round of ammunition.
Okay, so the live ammunition that was used for the coaching session was provided by Mr. Reed.
Correct.
And if you know, I don't know if you do you know where he got it?
Yes, he said he got it from Joe Swanson.
Okay, and who's Joe Swanson?
Joe Swanson is probably the primary supplier of blanks and dummy rounds to worldwide. If you happen to see something go bang in a puff of smoke in a movie or an episodic, a television show, worldwide, chances are that Joe Swanson made it.
Okay. Now, was all of the 45 Long Colt live ammunition that was used for the training camp on 1883, was it all used up?
No.
So can you tell us approximately how much was left over?
It was, if memory serves me correct, it was about 125 rounds, roughly.
And what happened to that ammunition after you finished training the actors on 1883?
Well, that's a little bit hazy. At one point, I do recall that certain things were offloaded from my Sprinter van because they just weren't needed. And that was one of those things. But
Okay, guys. So they keep messing with us. The TV stations are corrupt. They're lying to us. And I'm telling you that because they just announced that they're not going to be back for another hour. All right. So I'm going to end this stream and we're going to start back up when they start back in another hour. So sorry about that. Sorry about that. I got a little bit distracted by a text. Sorry about that, y'all. We were waiting for, they had come back. They probably don't know what they're doing themselves. So I appreciate you as well. Please remember to hit the like button. Thank you all for the gifted memberships. Welcome to the new members. And I will see you in an hour. Yeah, exactly, Terry. I agree. All right. I will see you soon. Bye.